Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elseygood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low dose naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. I'd like to introduce my guest today, Kay from the United States. Thank you for joining us, Kay.
Thank you for having me.
Now you take LDN for fibromyalgia and other conditions. Could you tell us which conditions they are?
Yes, and there are a bunch of them because they're all kind of autoimmune related. So I will go on ahead and say what they are, as many of them as I think might be important or that I can remember. Mm-hmm. But one of them is called Lichen Planopilaris, and that's a scarring alopecia of my scalp and hair, losing hair. Then there's I have fibromyalgia for years and years, chronic migraines, chronic sinusitis, chronic infections, sinus infections, and various bodily aches and pains that are pretty common for people, like the osteoporosis pain that you might have. So I think those are the main things.
Mm-hmm. And we've also got down here allergies and chemical sensitivities.
Absolutely. And that was part of what I would always think would bring on a sinus infection.
Okay.
So it's related.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you started to experience the early symptoms of all these different conditions?
I think that the symptoms have been, a lot of the symptoms I've had most of my life. They probably, the sinus infections, I had very regular colds all of my life. Mm-hmm. And that was just a hassle to have that all the time, like even once a month once I became a teenager. That was told to me to be idiopathic, meaning we don't know why, but you have it, or psychomotor response, which is, just swelling in your body. That kind of thing is what I got from the allergist at that time. So I would say that I've had it most of my life. When they really became a real issue was after I had our daughter. And so that would have been about age 29, 30. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's when just life became more difficult.
Did you experience pain at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So would you say that was, the start of the fibromyalgia at that point? Or did that later?
No, absolutely. You're right. That would be when it was. In fact, it was diagnosed by a rheumatologist. Mm-hmm. So, I felt confident with her.
Mm-hmm. So you were about 29 at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So would you say, what was your quality of life like at that time? What was a typical day for you? How were you feeling?
Mostly bedridden. I would alternate as best I could because, of course, when you have a baby, you can't be in bed.
No.
So that was an extremely difficult time as far as after the C-section and recovery. I remember my husband saying, well, are you going to unpack your suitcases and stay here or not? I didn't have the energy to go over and unpack suitcases. And so that quality of life, wasn't what I would have opted for at all. And in her growing up years too were difficult because I wanted to be as involved as a parent as I could, but I wasn't able to participate as fully in helping her, being a room mom, making sure, our family was supported in that way. I wasn't able to do that as much as I would have liked to. In fact, I did very little of it. I did manage off and on, back and forth, like back to the nap in the afternoon, or get up, get her out ready for school and all, and then back home and lay down and read or whatever, just not a whole lot of physical activity going on.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to have rated your quality of life at that time, 10 being the best, what would it have been?
I would rate it a 3.
Okay. So what medications were you given then, Kay?
I was given an anti-inflammatory, an NSAID called Voltaren, and I was given the generic form of it. Then, and that was just a discovery by a neurologist because it was accidental for backache, lower back. But then I told him, well, it's cataflam at first. And he said, that's the baby of Voltaren. So he said, well, I'm going to, if that helps your headaches, which that was kind of an insight there. It was like a light bulb moment. Okay, so we're going to put you on. He said, the mother of cataflam, which is called Voltaren. So I did that. And that made a big improvement in my life. And I've been on that same medicine all these years. And then, a lot off and on still, it was back to the asthma allergist doctor and him prescribing every antibiotic in the book, you know what I mean? Until finally, he had to say, well, we can't keep using this one or you'll become, resistant. Mm-hmm. To, and we may get in a situation where you really need that antibiotic, so we're not gonna use it. And so that was what was happening with me at that time.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, could you just describe what it was like, after you'd seen the rheumatologist and the neurologist? What was it like then? And how many years later are we talking about now?
Okay, now we're talking 36 years later.
Oh, okay.
So, it went on. Yeah, it went on and on like that because I saw that allergist, immunologist, I guess is what he really was. I saw him most of the years that our daughter was growing up and in high school. And I couldn't go, I would go to the games. She was in one of the teams that performed, and we'd go to the football games in the evening. And every single time the next day, I was miserable. The back of my nose area was inflamed. I'm sure it was swollen. It was painful. It was an alarming signal, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And there's nothing that could be done. It seemed. Mm-hmm. So then I had a couple of sinus surgeries, and the one that I had that worked was the last sinus surgery, and I was lucky to have found this. My husband helped find this doctor over in Dallas who did the surgery, and it's the kind where you insert. It was done in the office, but you insert a tubing and clear out the sinuses at the back of my neck. So, and then she went off to college and I became a school teacher. I needed to get another certification and have a second career. So I did that. And that was extremely, extremely difficult because I had to get up at 3 or 4 a.m. to prepare lessons. And I got my certification in special education, and I taught at our local high school for 14 years. And the kids increasingly got more rowdy. So I really wasn't quite up to that. I'd come home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I'd crash and I'd just sleep. That's all I do. That was what life was like for me during that time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't happy with that, especially with our daughter off at college. There were times when we wanted to go down to College Station and see her at her university and participate in those parent activities. And we did some of that, but most of the time I ended up again at the hotel in the lying down in the bed.
Oh, dear.
And so, yeah, that wasn't fun, but I got through it. I'm sure maybe a lot of people have this. I don't know, but I felt like the people I knew were all participating better than I was.
Mm-hmm.
That was my feeling.
Okay. And how did you hear about LDN?
I heard about LDN on Facebook. And I'm trying to think of why in the world it would have come my way. Because at that time, I really didn't belong to any private groups on Facebook. And all of a sudden, there it was as an option. So I clicked on it. And the thing that gave me confidence that LDN was a real thing was the org at the end. I felt like, well, if it's an org, then it's a real thing. It's sincerely a truthful thing. I don't know. It just gave it that feeling to me. And then from there, I went over and also joined the other group, which is how you got my name. And I wish I could remember that very first incentive that I got. Probably I was researching my symptoms on Google is the only thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
And the org came up, and then there was a Facebook logo, and I probably clicked on it and was taken immediately to you all. And I just feel like that was fate. It was just lucky.
Well, it's amazing. How easy was it to, obtain a prescription? Did it take you a long time?
No, my dermatologist was who I was seeing when I began LDN, and I asked him if I could take it. I wanted to take it, and he really quizzed me about, well, why? What do you think? And I said, well, I think it's going to help me because I think I didn't go into the fact that I thought all my symptoms were probably related to autoimmune, but I do, and I did. And he apparently agreed. He said, well, I've had patients on LDN. And I said, well, did it work for them? And he said, it worked for some and it didn't work for others. Okay. And he said, and kept, bringing home the point that there have not been clinical studies. He wanted me to know that, in no uncertain terms, that he would prescribe it, and he knew about it, which I felt very lucky that he did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got my first prescription. And from, we've moved since then. And so I have a new dermatologist, but the dermatologist that was recommended to me to be the one to switch to when we got here would not prescribe LDN. So I had to call back the compounding pharmacy here that I use and ask who they would recommend. And they gave me two names. So the first one I looked up on the internet, and I thought, okay, she looks like, I think I'd like her.
Okay.
So I was, we were willing to try that, and it worked out really well. She doesn't have any problems prescribing it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, not meaning to be rude, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. So you started all these problems, well, they reached a point when you were 29 and you had them earlier than that in childhood. How old are you now, Kay? Would you mind telling us?
No, I don't mind. I'm 68 now.
Okay, so you've had it a long time. And how old were you when you heard about LDN? How long ago was that?
A year ago.
Okay. So when you started, did you notice any introductory side effects?
Yes.
What did you
Very mild. The first night I had one of those night terrors. Mm-hmm. And I'm familiar with those because of some antidepressants that I was tried on a long time ago. And there were two of them and I don't remember the names of them, but they caused that. And I remember thinking, well, is this okay? And when I called, they said, don't take that one anymore. But with the LDN, I was willing to try it the second night, which that night I remember a more serious dream, but not anything that I even remember now. I remember that what I had that first night, but I don't remember the second night. And from then on, I haven't had any nighttime. I haven't had any nightmare or dream issues with it. The other thing that I seem to notice, but it's hard to tell if that's really the LDN or if it's just me, is there's a disc in my neck that has muscle involvement, and it'll act up or it'll get worse when I increase the dose. So that's the only, those are the only things that I've ever noticed as being side effects with it, which I'm just thrilled. You know, that's just thrilling to me, because there are medicines that in my past that I've been too sensitive to whatever's in them to take them.
Okay.
I don't have that with LDN.
And how long did it take before you noticed improvements?
Immediately. Now, I know that sounds too miraculous to be true, and maybe it was placebo, I don't know. But the first time I took it, I thought all the internal pain that I felt from, I suppose, fibromyalgia, like there's something inside that feels like it's swelling, that was gone. So, of course, the minute that's gone, you have a lot more energy. And I did. I had more energy. I just felt better. And I thought, well, no matter what it takes, I need to stay on this and figure out the best way to take it.
And what dose did you start on initially?
Okay, the first capsule was compounded. It had, a filler in it that's one of your normal fillers, and that's Avicel. And it was 4.0 milligrams.
Wow.
Of LDN, okay?
So that was high.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought so because of the information I got on the Facebook groups, which I have great faith in. There are some, I think, very learned, studied people on that. So I went on ahead and managed to figure out a way to dilute the capsule contents and take less of it. And I've been happy with that. Every now and then I try to increase it a bit because I think, well, maybe you reach a plateau.
Okay. So what would you say your quality of life is now on that score of 1 to 10?
8.
Well, that's
9, maybe.
Amazing. So
I remember after first starting taking it, I went back into my dermatologist for a normal checkup appointment, and I said, I'm just so thrilled, because that was in June of 2019 last year, and we took our grandchildren out to a huge field and went to a community fair and stayed out in the sun and outdoors with them all day. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to pay for this. And I just didn't have any problems. I didn't have any symptoms the next day. That's when I knew for sure, this is different. This is really different.
So you were saying that you had repeated colds the whole time. Have you experienced colds since you've been on LDN?
No colds, no sinus infections. Occasionally, if I eat something that bothers the back of my sinuses, it'll feel inflamed, but that goes away. Now, I just don't have it, but as I was getting used to it, the LDN, I guess, it would come and then it would go away quickly. I didn't suffer with it for days on end,
And what about the fibromyalgia pain?
Oh, I don't have fibromyalgia pain anymore. The pain that I would get in my neck occasionally, or perhaps my lower back, they were obviously either osteoarthritis here and there from bending the wrong way, from movement. Movement that I'm not used to. Yeah.
Well, what an amazing story. We've run out of time, but it was so interesting, Kay. And you have done amazing. I mean, this is going to be so inspirational, for other people that are listening out there. And just before we go, if anybody was to ask you about taking LDN, if they were unsure to try it, what would you say?
Well, I would say go for it. Don't be afraid. Just This is to me, this is the least invasive substance or drug or prescription that you can take, and that they should without a doubt, they should try it. And I can't think of anybody I know that I don't think should be on it or try it anyway,
Well, thank you for being our guest today, Kay.
Well, thank you so much for asking me. This has been real great.
This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.